there's a component here of mental health, meaning you are evaluating how this particular individual has been affected, or you are going to put in treatment.
What we know is that if a child has indeed been abused, that child needs to be seen by a professional counselor. The trauma of abuse, because typically abuse happens at the hands of someone that's known to the child, someone that's trusted by the child, typically. So there's a violation of trust, there's the personal violation, and all those things. If a child doesn't receive treatment, those feelings, those things that have happened inside them will fester, and either it turns into self-destructive type behavior. The child will begin acting out in negative ways. You can see it in school performance, you can see it in getting into trouble, you can see the child getting involved in drugs or other things like that, start beginning to maybe themselves act out towards other children or something. Or they will, if it doesn't go inward, it goes outward, and they become eventually perpetrators of abuse.
I was just going to say, yeah, do they then perpetrate what they've been through? Is there a link to that?
That can happen, yes. And by interrupting that cycle, that's where the counseling comes in.
Okay.
And we refer to professional counselors who are trained in doing trauma-based counseling. It's very important that it's trauma-based, not just regular counseling, so to speak, because it's a trauma that has to be addressed.
So there's a victim advocacy that comes into play here then too. I am familiar with that because of what happens with victims in a court setting.
Yes.
But what is the victim advocacy? How does that come into play with this?
Well, of course, every child who has been abused is a victim, as well as their family now, their whole system. So we have a case manager who meets with the family, who tries to see their situation, sees what they might need. Sometimes before you can talk to them about getting that help I mentioned earlier for the child, you have to talk with getting some basic needs met. You have to get them connected to the food pantry or to the housing people or something, because if they don't have those basic needs, they aren't going to take care of the other things. So we have to see all of that. And then we refer. I mean, we're a little agency. We can't physically take care of all those needs, but we know who can. So we refer people to the Crime Victim Center.
Okay.
We refer people to the various agencies and nonprofits that can help them with whatever those needs are. We're kind of a conduit to make sure they get to the right place and get connected to the right people.
And once again, this is Michael Gaines. He is the head of the Children's Advocacy Center. It's located 2005 West 8th, the former, what building is it?
Former Eagles
Club. Yeah, there's always a former something there. You know, I'm listening to you, Mike, and you make a lot of sense to me, and people are watching out there, and but my old man batted me around, and hell, I turned out terrific. Come on, And I'm okay, I probably deserved it. A good spanking never hurt anybody. Spare the rod, spoil the child. How do you combat all of that? Or what do you say to that, I should say?
My first answer to that is there's a difference between a spanking that's administered, for example, in a manner that's not injurious to the child. I mean, a swat on the behind, so to speak. Versus somebody who hits a child and turns them black and blue, who breaks facial bones, and I mean, we have the documented cases, we have the pictures from the hospital, we have got the x-rays that show the broken bones. There's a big difference. A lot of times that difference has something to do with people who know also how to monitor themselves. Somebody who flies into a rage and just starts wailing away at a little child. Children are vulnerable, and they're much more easily injured than an adult would be in that situation. That's different than somebody getting a corrective SWAT or something like that. I don't make a stand on basic discipline that does not cause injury to the child. There are different cultural things. Some groups believe that it's okay to spank, some do not. That's a parenting decision.
Sure.
And the experts in parenting can talk about what is the best or the most effective discipline methods, those sort of things. My concern is when it crosses that line and goes from being disciplined to being injurious. When a child is receiving physical injuries that require doctor's treatment, something's wrong. Something's gone too far.
The hospital would be a place where they would report this child to you, or emergency room, I should say, perhaps?
Emergency people, again, have to report this to the authorities.
So this would be like in Mill Creek here, the Mill Creek Paramedic Service would suspect that this child who has a broken leg didn't get a broken leg by what they're being told by the parents. It's just nothing lined up, then they're required to report and say, hey,
the paramedics certainly could raise questions. It would probably be more likely that it would be the doctor, because they would defer to the doctor if they transported the child for treatment.
Yeah.
But again, very seldom is it a situation where this is something that's just happening this moment. I mean, we're talking the physical abuse, obviously you're going to get that when it happens, because that's somebody's bleeding, somebody's got a broken arm, somebody has a fractured skull. So much of the abuse that we see, though, is not physical abuse, it's sexual abuse.
Okay.
And those sort of things often comes out weeks and even months later.
Yeah.
And there it's much more investigation. It's much more the law enforcement people, the detectives following the trail, talking to people, interviewing, trying to see what happened.
And again, going to the Casey Anthony trial in Orlando, there's been claims of that. Do they fall back on that as an excuse for their behavior? And the prosecution says we don't buy that. I mean, it's a dance. They're just trying to get you to not. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of ramifications to that. And we're being very polite here, and we're talking about nice things. But you know, you've always been a pain in the neck, and I don't know why you were born in the first place, Michael, because you know you're nothing but stupid. How do you find that out, that they are being mentally degraded and talked to and spoken and just yelled at and have no self-esteem by the time they get to school practically?
Those are much more difficult cases, obviously, because you don't have physical findings. You have those emotional scars which we can't x-ray. We can't put a stethoscope on it or shine a light and see. Oftentimes, if that's going to come out, it comes out from a disclosure from a child to somebody they trust. It might be a teacher, it might be a school counselor, it might be a clergy person, it might be a relative. Somebody who believes what the child says, what the child is saying is credible. It's not simply some sort of difficult situation where the child is, you know, just being angry at somebody and making up things. And then it gets referred again to the authorities who look into these things very carefully. I would say that type of a situation would be a much more carefully investigated before any formal legal action was taken, for example, because the proof has to be very strong. It's not something that's just going to be obvious.
A lot of people, a lot of viewers go throughout your county quite a bit. How can the people who are watching want to help fight against child abuse? How can they get involved to help you?
Well, we are a nonprofit organization. We work with all these county agencies and the police departments, but we are a nonprofit, so we do depend upon the public support, and we're very thankful for it. We have a website, www.cacerie.org. So Children's Advocacy Center, cacerie.org. They can call us 814-451-0202, and we certainly can tell them how to, they can be of help. The biggest help we need, of course, are donations to help keep the doors open and keep the things we do running, but we also do have an auxiliary that does help us with some fundraisers and with some events for things, so if people are interested. We are on a rocket ship to technology leaping in front of itself so rapidly you can't keep up with it anymore. And you have all the social media where people are posting inappropriate photos of themselves, and the internet has just opened the doors to so much good and so much bad. What can you tell parents about teaching their children about that? I mean, I know that's a whole 4 hours in itself. It is, but in a nutshell, be vigilant of what your children are doing. Children are very trusting. Even the streetwise ones are very trusting, particularly online. We are seeing an increase in cases of people who have, adults, older people who have met teenagers, young teens, online, said to them, I'm a teenager, you know, how do you know they're not? They talk back and forth, they arrange a meeting, and it's some abuser out there trying to make a connection and abuse the child, take advantage of the trust of a teen. So know what your kid, know what sites they're on, know who they're talking to, teach them about not disclosing personal information.
Yeah, but wait a minute, Dad, you don't trust me. Come on, Dad, you don't trust me. Jeez.
That is so
And
hard.
I know you went back into my computer and looked at my history file to see what I was on.
Right.
I'm mad at you. You don't trust me. What's the matter? I'm 13. You don't trust me. How do you combat that?
That's a very hard one, as any parent will tell you.
Yes, it is.
But you have to keep working with your children. I mean, explain to them. It's not that I don't trust you, but I've been around the world enough to know that there are people who aren't trustworthy out there. And my job as a parent is to make sure you're safe, even if it makes you unhappy that I'm doing it.
Oh, that was very good. I like that one. That's good. We now have grandchildren, and like many, and yes, they want to go on the internet and they want to play the PBS Kids games and they want to play the Nick games and all that stuff, but somehow they also know how to use that mouse to click on other things, and I have to be there next to them when they're doing that, saying that the site that they've just jumped to or gotten to is inappropriate.
Yes, parental controls help, but they don't prevent everything. I mean, technology is not perfect, a perfect policeman. So the fact of the computer being in a public place, the family room, someplace where you can see, a place to just see what they're doing, and be ready to explain when your young child clicks on a site and suddenly something inappropriate shows up. You better be ready to explain what they just saw and why that they shouldn't be there.
Michael Gaines from the Children's Advocacy Center, thanks for explaining all the good things that you do to all of our viewers. Again, this is the Bradley H. Folk Children's Advocacy Center, Michael Gaines, and they are here to help you. Don't be afraid if you have any questions to either. Well, you can call me or you can call you at that place, and Michael can tell you where to go to get help.
We'd be happy to help anyone who needs.
Thanks, Michael.
Certainly.
Thanks for being with us today. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.